I would like to open this up to the floor now. Does anybody have any questions or comments or experiences they would like to share? So to remind you, we're talking about developing a publishing strategy, outsourcing peer review and editorial management, optimizing journal production, and going to tender.
Hi, I'm Catherine Spiller from Bioscientific. I have a question for Erin about the strategy. Who do you see as the key people who should be developing the publishing strategy for the Society? Would you think it would be the Publications Committee? And if so, who would you see being on that committee? Maybe external representation?
It's a good question. Typically with the partners I work with and I like to advocate is you have to have stakeholders, obviously, from the society itself. So often they'll have a publications committee. Usually a publications committee will have ex officio members, usually the editors-in-chief of the respective publications. I think it's integral to have their view as part of that committee. From the publisher side, the publisher himself, the individual responsible for that portfolio and society relationship, as well as marketing and in digital development. At least that's who I like to bring from my team, because these three individuals or three departments work very closely. And by digital, that can mean typically what was known as production, but in the modern world, I would say that's really a digital solutions provider. And the reason I advocate for all these different individuals from the society side as well as the publisher side is that we've seen in publishing all the different requirements that it takes to have a modern portfolio that delivers solutions to an audience. You know, the audience often will follow a particular society because that society, part of its mission is to advocate on behalf of the topic in question in the first part. Second part, it's seen as essential content. And so in the digital field, you have to have not only the traditional requirements of editorial practice and production quality, you have to have the visibility that ties in not only to the architecture of the content as it's supported by the platform, but also at the end of the day, it's still marketing. It's also that marketing helps support the brand of the society and the publications as the organ of the society itself. In the digital sphere, that's incredibly important because I think everyone in this room, I would hazard a bet, does not get past the first page of any Google search. So it's not in the top 5 or top 10, certainly, you're going to bypass it.
I agree. Thank you. I wanted to draw one of the common themes that I was picking up from each of your talks and ask for your comments on resistance to change and what advice, tips you would have on change management. Perhaps start with Jessica.
Oh, that's a day-long workshop, right? The conversations we've had with editors, just in my particular line of work, but I'm sure that you've all encountered this, are not easy, especially when we first start broaching the subject. And so I mentioned that when we first started talking about transitioning to our managed support program that we failed, and that's because I think we failed to listen initially. We knew from a financial and operational perspective what we wanted to do. We had done our homework, but we really didn't share that information out and ask for their feedback. So I think that for us, the first step to successfully managing a change of that magnitude is to really hear what our editors were concerned about and to gather that feedback and be really consistent in our responses. So we have 425 people asking questions, and we want to make sure we are, not giving 425 different answers. So I think that's key. The other thing that in a change of this magnitude, and I'm sure this is true on the production side of things as well, is we couldn't afford any major screw-ups, at least not in the first couple of years. So I mentioned that it was really important to choose exceptional vendors, and I can't underscore that enough, because all it would have taken, surprise, our editors talk to each other, right? All it would have taken is for one to have a really, really poor experience, and we might have failed a second time. So the quality management in the beginning of a change of that magnitude is also really important. And I won't go on because, like I said, whole workshop, but those are two big things for me.
Thank you. Lisa, what about you?
On the production side, unlike when I did a similar transition in a previous company, more than 10 years ago, where there was a lot of resistance to this whole idea of offshoring work. We didn't find that this time. I mean, we just ensured that the transition was seamless for editors and as seamless as it could be. And, there wasn't a lot on the production side this time. But, as Jessica spoke to, when we transitioned our editorial offices, there was, almost mutiny with our editors. And I think we had to, find, some of these people, some of our editors had been on board for a very long time. We had a managing editor who had been on board for 40 years. And, they weren't AIP employees, but we were supporting them financially, and that was very difficult. So I think it's about finding the right balance, getting input and listening, but also, you need to move forward from a business perspective. And then, also, again, face-to-face meetings was very important. So when we transitioned, our editorial offices, we're smaller than ACS, but we visited, someone from AIP with the partner that we chose, and we chose a very high-quality partner. We did a road trip to each and every editorial office and introduced the staff. We maintained some of the previous staff. We hired new people, so it was a balance. But, we met everyone face-to-face and really went through the process of understanding what their pain points were. So it took some time, but, and I think another theme from this session today, at least from some of us, is, this idea of communication. And it sounds a little bit trite, but, you really can't discount in almost any of these types of transitions, whether it's with internal staff or with editors, the importance of communicating and really over-communicating. We have an editor's blog, so we blog somebody, I don't know who reads it, but we have a blog that we send to our editors on a semi-regular basis with information, so they can't say, well, you did this, but, and you didn't tell us. It's like, well, yes, we did. So, and it's not, down to just the blog, but it's, lots of different communication mechanisms.
Thank you. Aaron, what would you say about helping your society clients to overcome their resistance to change?
Well, if I have a society client
Alchemy
that's
Society.
speaking to me, it's because they've already decided to make a change, and so I'm going to metaphorically embrace that decision. Kathy touched upon it. I alluded to it, but you have to have communication. People are resistant to change. That's just human nature. However, since you're a society in question may be looking for a prospective partnership with a commercial or not-for-profit publisher, you're going to have extensive conversations. I'm a big believer in documenting the fine points of any proposal we put forward in the first part. Second part, during that transition where you're giving over certain services to your publisher, I believe in consistent scheduling transition. Typically we have transitions every 2 weeks. Give a high-level executive summary to the stakeholders and the society side. They're your first round of marketing in terms of reaching out to the greater membership, as well as to soothing any kind of concerns they may be from the disparate editorial boards who are always not part of the active conversation. My role is essentially, I believe the role of the publisher is to be the business arm of the society in question. And if you are the business arm, that means you're reporting to them. And you're giving them that kind of executive briefing that they need to be educated about what the vocabulary is of publishing, what the decisions are, and when they are needed.
And unless there are any other questions from the floor, I had a very quick question for Kathy. You were talking about familiarity, breeding all sorts of nasty things.
Not contempt.
Do you think it's best practice for societies to always go to tender on a regular basis, or do you think it could be construed as a waste of time if they're perfectly happy with the offering that they're getting from their current publisher?
I think the only ones that I'm seeing of late going out are those that are forced to by their bylaws on a regular basis. Usually there's some reason why they would even consider it. It's extremely time-consuming, and if they hire a consultant, it's not without cost. But the thing that is the most worrisome when you look, well, even now, is how disruptive it is and how dangerous it is to your business because of the long-term licenses and institutional licenses in particular is what I'm talking about, and being able to replicate that revenue. So normally when I work with someone, they will call me in and want to talk about the implications. But I have not personally worked with any who just do it as a routine. And I think it's not fair to the publishers, quite honestly, if that's why they're doing it, because it's enormously time-consuming and expensive on the publisher's part. I just had to put a document together for one of my clients who is in the midst of renegotiating their contract, or we are renegotiating their publishing contract, and they got a new CFO, and the CFO came in and said, every contract has to go out to bid. And we went, whoa, no, we don't want to do that. We're right in the midst. Well, you still have to do it. And so I had to put together a document explaining why for a true publishing contract is not a vendor contract. I mean, it's a long-term business arrangement. And so the CFO backed down. But, I think people are more cautious about it than they used to be.
Thank you. Well, I would like to thank you all very much for your attention, and I'd like to once again thank our fantastic 4 panelists. Thank you.